elsewhere, with some sunshine, not feeling too unpleasant. Then, clear skies once again on Tuesday night will lead to a fairly widespread frost, but towards the southwest, thicker cloud, and for Cornwall and perhaps Devon later on, some outbreaks of light rain. That'll keep things frost-free, 7 or 8 Celsius towards the southwest, whilst across Scotland, northern and eastern England, again, a chilly one to wake up to on Wednesday morning. The wintry showers by Wednesday, though, confined to the far northeast of Scotland. Further south, we've got thicker cloud and some outbreaks of light rain pushing through. A dull and damp day, especially for South Wales and the southwest of England, and similar conditions on Thursday, with some heavier rain moving through on Thursday night across southern parts of the UK, clearing away, though, for warmer weather this weekend.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, the MSM's activist journalists rejoice at successfully taking down another government minister.
Really, we wouldn't be where we are today without the reporting, not just on Sky News, but on The Guardian and other media outlets.
What Raab's departure brings back to this place is a sense of scandal.
But Dominic Raab went down swinging and hit out at these snowflake civil servants who ruined his political career.
Warned by a very senior member of the government, a senior civil servant, that there are increasingly activist civil servants mobilised by the FDA union who are looking to target ministers.
I'll slam the woke British deep state now running the country and explain why Whitehall's socialist blob must be overhauled for the sake of our democracy. That's in a special digest next before my superstar panel weigh-in. Tonight, I'm joined by Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Belinda DeLucy. Then Fleet Street icon Calvin McKenzie delivers his unflinching verdict on the witch hunt that proved the woke blob has undemocratically seized control of our government. Also coming up, Keir Starmer has condemned Diane Abbott's anti-Semitic comments where she claimed the racism Jews suffered is akin to that of gingers.
In my view, what she said was to be condemned. It was anti-Semitic. It's absolutely right that we acted as swiftly as we did.
But is the now suspended Corbynite MP getting an easy ride from the Liberal media because of the colour of her skin? And would the response have been different if she were white? Lawrence Fox investigates in the Fox Report. Elsewhere tonight, Meghan has broken cover for the first time since snubbing the coronation to introduce a TED Talk for her woke Hollywood lovey pal.
I've experienced his talent firsthand as he has captured many meaningful milestones for me and my family.
But as she hypocritically lashes out at the British press for creating a, quote, exhausting circus despite the Sussex's ongoing worldwide privacy tour, do Meghan's continued attacks on the media prove she's a deluded narcissist? Star Daily Telegraph columnist Celia Wootton is going to lend her expert analysis. Plus, she's looking at this idea that Harry and Meghan are leading separate lives. Plus, after her letter accusing the royal family of unconscious bias is revealed, should King Charles cut all ties with the Duchess of Sussex, Richard Fitzwilliams, Rebecca Toomey and Cara Kennedy do battle in the clash? With the Sunday Mail sensationally revealing that cops are looking for burner phones in the SNP finance probe, does the continuity candidate Humza Useless need to cut off the previous scandal-ridden regime? Our man in Stirling, Neil Oliver. Can't wait to hear from him on this. Also on the way, gender extremism spreading now across the globe.
I dare you to try and stop me from going into a women's bathroom. It will be the last mistake you ever make.
More on that chilling video and other disturbing developments in the gender wars and the media buzz later. Plus, in Greatest Britain tonight, we'll pay tribute to two anti-woke giants of entertainment, Len Goodman and Barry Humphries, who we sadly lost. Can't believe both of them gone in the past few days, and let me tell you, they really don't make them like that anymore. As ever, stay tuned for a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. They'll be hot off the press. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel. Hope you had a lovely weekend. My digest coming up on why the British deep state have won when it comes to Dominic Raab, straight after Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening to you. The top story on GB News tonight. The government says it's taking the Royal College of Nursing to court after labelling their planned strike action as unlawful. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, says he's been left with no choice but to proceed with legal action following attempts by his officials to resolve the situation. It comes as the union prepares to take industrial action from the 30th of April to the 2nd of May. The RCN's leader, Pat Cullen, described the government's legislation as draconian. Now, the Confederation of British Industry says it has dismissed a number of people after a series of sexual misconduct and rape allegations. Dozens of the body's members, including BMW, Vodafone and John Lewis, have all left, with the organisation suspending its policy and membership activities forthwith. Well, earlier today, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, said there was no point engaging with the CBI anymore and that the government preferred to work with a trade body that sticks up for business. Now, as you've been hearing, Sir Keir Starmer says the comments made by Labour MP Diane Abbott were anti-Semitic. In an article for The Observer, the former Shadow Health Secretary said Jewish, Irish and traveller people experience prejudice but not racism. She's since withdrawn those remarks and she's apologised. Labour has previously come under fire for anti-Semitic remarks made by the former party leader, Jeremy Corbyn. Well, Sir Keir today said it was absolutely right. The party acted swiftly as it did.
What she wrote yesterday, I utterly condemn. And I said we would tear out anti-Semitism by its roots. I meant it, and that's why we acted so swiftly yesterday. I think it's a mark of how far the Labour Party has changed, that we acted so swiftly and that we take it so seriously. But I condemn what she said.
Now turning our attentions to Sudan, and the Africa Minister here, Andrew Mitchell, says the government's exploring every conceivable option to evacuate British nationals from the northeast African country. Germany has already evacuated more than 300 people today. We believe that included British citizens. And an emergency COBRA meeting was held at Downing Street today, with the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office advising those still in the country to stay indoors and wait it out until they got further information. There's a violent conflict in the country between the Sudanese army and a powerful paramilitary group. Well, there are more than 2,000 to 4,000 UK nationals still in the country. We'll bring you up to date on their fate over the coming days. Scientists have released the most detailed image of Mars's moon yet. It's called Deimos. Take a look if you're watching on TV. These photos captured by the United Arab Emirates Space Agency during their recent flypast of the moon. Their probe flying as close as 62 miles from Deimos. One of the pictures capturing the red planet drifting into view during the probe's closest approach. The Queen Consort has paid her tribute to former Strictly Come Dancing judge Len Goodman, who's died at the age of 78. Buckingham Palace said Camilla, who's danced with Len Goodman, was saddened to learn of his death. Dame Arlene Phillips said her heart was truly broken. Darcy Bussell called him a true gentleman. Fellow judge Craig Revel-Horwood said Len would live with him forever. And Bruno Tonioli called him the one and only ballroom legend. He was a judge on the show from 2004 to 2016. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's official. The British deep state is now out of control, in charge and doing all it can to undermine the government. Boris Johnson and Liz Truss aside, the former Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab is their biggest scalp yet. The game plan is now familiar. A staunch Brexiteer, tick. Challenging the orthodoxy of the woke blob to get things done, tick. Attempting to use the law to stop the boats, tick. Won't bow down to snowflake civil servants, tick. Just like the Home Secretary Priti Patel before him, Raab checked all of those boxes. So they called them both bullies in what Raab correctly described as a, quote, tyranny of hurt feelings. The only difference this time was the Prime Minister. Boris Johnson had the balls to stand by his closest ally, Rishi Sunak. He folded at the slightest hint of pressure. And the decision to throw Raab under the bus has untold consequences for this Conservative government to enact its policies, which were overwhelmingly endorsed by the British public. As Raab himself told GB News in the hours after his exit, there was a coordinated campaign by the activist civil service.
Do you think that perhaps civil servants coordinated a campaign to remove you, a political campaign?
Well, there was certainly some coordination. One of the complaints was struck out because they'd written it together. They were all submitted on the same day, which is the 15th of November. I think a few came just a little bit later. That can't be coincidental. I also know that I was warned by a very senior member of the government, a senior civil servant, that there are increasingly activist civil servants mobilised by the FDA union who are looking to target ministers.
Now, you'd think, given the scale of this potential scandal, the rest of the British MSM would be all over this story. Quite the opposite. It's clear to anyone with half a brain that the media, notably Sly News and the British Bashing Corporation, has been in cahoots with the blob to force Raab out. And when that eventually happened on Friday, they actually gave the game away by going on air to celebrate.
He thinks it is a bad thing that the media got hold of accounts of his behaviour, which he contests, and thinks that that's unacceptable. Really, we wouldn't be where we are today without the reporting, not just on Sky News, but on The Guardian and other media outlets.
Some officials who had to work with Dominic Raab were offered therapy. Behaviour was described as nasty, horrible and manipulative. This is all becoming very difficult for Dominic Raab. When a minister is in the firing line for this long and with such pressure, you do have to wonder about their future.
I saw him seething at other senior people, hard staring at you. Lots of it was what I'd describe as microaggressions.
Allegations about civil servants being too scared to go into his office. It's even the rather notorious claim that he once got so angry in a meeting that he threw a tomato from a Pret salad at someone.
What Raab's departure brings back to this place is a sense of scandal.
Now, as it turned out, Raab never actually chucked a tomato, but he's still branded a bully simply for trying to get the woke blob to do what they ought to. It sets a terrifying precedent and puts Brexit and the government's bid to stop the boats under threat. The civil service must be totally overhauled, with ministers allowed to hire their own officials. But to respond now, my superstar panel. Top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, the journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and the former MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy. So, Carol Malone, this is a gigantic victory for the deep state. What happened to Rishi Sunak?
You know, this is the mistake that will come back to haunt Sunak and letting him resign. I suspect the two of them have done a deal together and Raab will be back in about 6 months. But that is not the point, because what he's done now in letting Raab go, he's undermined every minister's ability to run his own department, because now they've won, now they've scored this victory, now not only can they undermine policies that are suggested by this government, they can undermine the people within the government. And all they have to do now, if a minister upsets them or they don't like what they say, all they have to do is shout bullying. You know, some of these charges, that inquiry cleared Raab of 6 out of the 8 charges. These were charges that went back a number of years. And we know that there were activists within the party who are dredging this stuff up all the time. But, what you just said there, ministers should have the right to employ their own officials simply because they do in workplaces. You wouldn't employ someone who hated you. And we know we have a civil service that is steeped in left-wing bias, anti-Brexit bias. It hates all the human rights changes that have been made. They don't want to control immigration, and so they will try and thwart everything Sue Ella is doing. We know that they're after her now. But, we can't have a situation where the civil service forces the resignation of a government minister, and that's exactly what happened here. And they threatened to resign if Raab didn't go. Well, let them resign. They're so easily replaceable. Half of them are still working from home anyways. You mentioned there the tomato throwing incident. Do you know what some of these charges that were levelled at him? All of the charges that originally were made anonymously. One of them was that he looked at you very sternly and gave you a cold, hard glare. That's bullying, apparently. One of them was that he expected you to come in to see him if he summoned you very quickly. Well, as most of them are working from home, it probably took him 2 or 3 days to get in. Of course he wants you to come in because he's a busy man. He hasn't got time.
Of course.
It's
And
not bullying.
he knows that they are pushing back against his agenda time and again. Belinda Lucy, one of the last things I said on the show on Thursday night when Sunak was contemplating what to do is that this was not just a test of Rishi Sunak's political will, it was a test of his character. Dominic Raab wasn't just any old cabinet minister, he was the Deputy Prime Minister. He was his closest ally. And unfortunately, I believe the Prime Minister was incredibly weak here.
Oh, he completely failed the test. And I was so surprised because I agree with Carol. I think this will really come back and haunt him. One of the reasons why there's been this cultural shift in the civil service, they've sort of lost any purpose or idea of what they're supposed to be doing. They think they're now there to resist ideas they don't like and to preach and to lecture and get rid of people they don't like. They're supposed to be doing their job and they should get a P45 if they're not. Absolutely. But since Brexit, the Conservatives have taken their eye off the ball. They've been asleep at the wheel and let the civil service basically overreach their powers and become politicised, under their watch. And now what we're seeing is Rishi Sunak, instead of saying we need to reset the civil service, we need to make sure they sign impartiality oaths, we need to make sure that they do as they're told, as any of us are in our jobs. Instead, he's almost sided with the civil service by accepting Raab's resignation, a sign of utter weakness.
He should have said, you are absolutely not going anywhere. I'm going to back you on this. I've read the report. It's very clear you are nothing close to a bully. I mean, look, Benjamin Butterworth, you're known as the wokest man in Britain. You are regularly referred to as a major snowflake. So I'm actually terrified. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I am terrified that in a few months' time, you're going to accuse me of bullying because, yes, I sometimes stare at you angrily, and yes, I sometimes interrupt you. This is a joke, isn't it? I mean, this is a joke.
It's not a joke, actually. It's incredibly serious. And in a way, I agree that Rishi Sunak was wrong, because what he should have done if he wasn't rollover Rishi was to sack this bully.
What?
Because
sack someone for interrupting people? I've just interrupted you now. Should I be sacked?
The truth
you
is,
deserve it, because you're speaking rubbish. And the problem is, these members of the blob would probably talking rubbish too.
Look, the truth is that an independent lawyer who was asked to make this assessment found that he had been guilty of bullying on 2 counts. There were 24 people in the civil servants who accused him of bullying. And the idea that you're asserting, this preposterous claim by Dominic Raab trying to get himself out of a hole, that junior civil servants were going up to the Deputy Prime Minister and refusing to take his orders, is clearly ridiculous.
If a boss tells someone in his department he's not doing his job properly, and that person cries as a result, is that classed as bullying?
It's not classed as bullying.
That's what Dominic Raab did.
If someone is simply experiencing the intensity of a workplace,
that's what does it not occur
crying is a normal emotion. What's the problem is if someone is setting out to make them cry.
This is the government. You've got to be tough. He is trying to get things done to actually save the country. The reason he's going against the Justice Department is because there's going to be big issues to come when it comes to the Rwanda scheme and the ECHR. And the fact that you were saying, I mean, I actually don't think you've read the report, because if you read the report, it's very obvious that Dominic Raab ain't a bully.
No, I mean, big issue might be his next job, but it's not what he's trying to deal with at the moment.
The report said clearly, just let's represent, it said that in the last 4 years, he had not shouted or sworn at a single employee. So these charges go back even further than that. So how is he a bully if for 4 years no one's heard him raise his voice?
Well, the independent lawyer,
John Bercow was found guilty on 21 counts.
Yes.
And I think,
smashing phones.
And I totally accept that John Bercow was a bully, and I said at the time that he should have been sacked long before.
Well, sadly, none of your Ramona mates did.
This is just a way This is just a way to try and make an excuse for 30 years of failure. You don't need to be a bully to get things done, and he ain't getting anything done.
Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, Belinda DeLucy, my superstar panel, were with me all night. But coming up, after Labour MP Diane Abbott made a disgusting anti-Semitic comment comparing the racism suffered by Jews to that of gingers, is the now suspended Corbyn ally getting easy treatment from the Liberal media because of her own skin colour? Lawrence Fox investigates soon. But up next, in The Clash, after the Daily Telegraph reveals Meghan sent a letter to King Charles accusing the royal family of unconscious bias, should the King just cut all ties now with the Duchess of Delusion? Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams, the reporter Rebecca Toomey, and staff writer at The Spectator. She breaks a lot of stories on royal issues. Cara Kennedy, and I'm going to duke it out on The Clash next. But what do you think, Dan at gbnews.uk? Tweet and vote in our poll at GB News. The Clash, straight after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's news channel.
Neil Oliver and Lawrence Fox on the way, but first, The Clash. And it's been over 2 years since the Sussexes' fantasy-fueled Oprah interview where Meghan made a racism claim against the royal family about a senior member commenting on Archie's skin colour, which to this day remains unfounded. And in a bombshell exclusive from the Daily Telegraph, the newspaper reveals that in the aftermath, she wrote a letter to King Charles concerning the shocking allegation. Now, the King, who is believed to be the only senior royal to get in contact with the Duchess following the hit job interview, had written to Meghan to understand why she would go public with such a damaging claim. And in response, Meghan began the great backtrack, claiming she only meant to accuse the individual of, quote, unconscious bias. But shamefully, she never said that publicly, meaning the Queen and Prince Philip died shrouded in unfounded racism claims on a global scale. Not a good look for Team Sussex, but rather than take the deserved criticism, a spokesperson on behalf of the Duchess of Delusion hit back, insisting that the Duchess of Sussex is going about her life in the present, not thinking about correspondence from 2 years ago related to conversations from 4 years ago. Any suggestion otherwise is completely false and frankly ridiculous. We encourage tabloid media and various royal correspondents to stop the exhausting circus that they alone are creating. Circus? Who's the ringmaster? Who's just spent 3 years encouraging this stuff? But in light of the letter exchange, tonight I'm asking you this. Should King Charles cut all ties with Meghan Markle? Email me down at gbnews.uk. Our poll running live at GB News, but battling this out. I'm joined by staff writer at The Spectator. She breaks lots of royal scoops, Cara Kennedy, the entertainment reporter and commentator, Rebecca Toomey, and the royal commentator, Richard Fitzwilliams. So, look, Richard, this doesn't make any sense to me, because Meghan Markle says it's us creating the circus. She was the one that made the claim to Oprah Winfrey. She was the one that spent 3 years saying nothing about it publicly until Prince Harry backtracked in January. And during that time, Richard Fitzwilliams, Prince Philip died, the late Queen died, and I think it is unforgivable that Meghan Markle allowed those two great people to die without her correcting the record. There was no royal racist. The royal family is not racist.
I think the whole thing is absolutely scandalous. I couldn't believe the story when I saw it, that in fact, yet again, the Sussexes have shown they can't be trusted. And this particular leak, as you say, if you look at the history and the scandal after that Oprah programme, the interview, where in point of fact she made those claims, the two claims, Harry discussed them and she discussed them at contradictory times, as you'll recall. But there was absolutely no indication that unconscious bias was the issue. It splashed, as you say, worldwide, and indeed Prince Philip very shortly thereafter died. The whole thing is quite unbelievable, and if she thinks she can move on, that people will forget, it is a very grave mistake. So far as King Charles is concerned, when Prince of Wales then, he wrote to her and obviously showed great concern. Now, of course, the letter just so happens to have been leaked, and we know that she's living in the present. My good gracious me, what a change. You wonder what on earth would be next, what ought to be next.
Well, indeed. And the thing is, what we know will be next with her is seeking lots more publicity, Cara Kennedy, because I'm sorry, she was the one that when we're all mourning the late Queen, decides to broadcast her sick Netflix reality show, doing down the life's work of the late monarch, the Commonwealth. I mean, where does she get off saying we're creating the circus? She has created the circus alone with her husband.
Again, thanks, Dan. I think timing is impeccable with this one. They seem to have the best timed leak stories ever. So this story went out on Friday, which would have been the late Queen's 97th birthday, meant to be a day of remembrance, a day of celebration, and it turned into the Meghan and Harry circus yet again. It's pretty obvious who leaked this letter. There's only one side with an agenda. I mean, I spoke to people close to Charles and Camilla the other day, and Camilla was supposedly devastated that they feel like they're on the back foot yet again. She was also devastated after the Jeremy Clarkson column because, again, it kind of substantiated Meghan's claims. And, yeah, I think that it's time to move on now. It's time to stop feeding the beast.
Absolutely fascinating reporting there. Of course, Rebecca Toomey, Meghan claims she's not behind this leak at all. But you've got to admit, it's quite ironic, her saying that she doesn't want to be part of the circus. I mean, what was the Netflix reality show about then? All she did was look back to her time in the royal family. What are all of her interviews about? What was the Oprah thing about? All she does is look back at her time in the royal family.
Well, I think, first of all, with the Netflix documentary, I'd like to say that it wasn't actually her decision when that aired, especially the second part. We were all in mourning, but I don't think we can really pin that on Meghan because these things are planned months and months in advance. Secondly, in that documentary, yes, there were parts about the Commonwealth, but there were actually a big, some might say narcissistic style love story between her and Harry. So I don't think we can accuse her of constantly bashing and having a go at the royals. And I'd also like to make the point, why we're talking about Meghan Markle and Prince Charles's letter. Why should he cut Meghan Markle out when Prince Andrew has pretty much got off scot-free with his behaviour?
Oh, hardly. Hardly,
no,
Rebecca. He's lost his job. He's about to be booted out of his palace.
Well, he's still...
He's disgraced. He's shamed. Oh, come on. Come on. He couldn't even wear his military uniform to his mum's funeral, Richard.
No, Prince Andrew hasn't got off scot-free. He's disaster of Krakatoa proportions. He showed it with that ridiculous interview on Newsnight. I mean, that was just absolutely bizarre. He's got no patronages. They used to have over 200. He has, in fact, no future.
Exactly. But Rebecca, look, you've raised Prince Andrew. That's whataboutery in this case. Prince Andrew is destroyed. My issue is that your precious Meghan, you know, the woman who you seem to think is a great humanitarian, I'm sorry, I describe her as a faux humanitarian, because actually, what's she done since she left the royal family to improve the world? All she does is look back because she wants to destroy the royal family. That's what she is going to be remembered for. And let me tell you, Rebecca, she ain't going to win.
No, she might not win, but the thing is, we constantly want to dislike her. She's not perfect. Yes, she's a celebrity, she's in the public eye, and people are going to want to see her. As I've said previously to you, they want to put her in the Wicked Witch thing, and she can't be perfect, but she can't be wicked. She's just human, and we like to see the royals, as we do most celebrities, as not particularly human. They're supposed to represent the good and the bad because of decline in religion. We could go on for ages about this. But Meghan, what else can she really do now? Because everything she does, if she does any charity work, everyone will be saying, oh, she's just cashing in on the royals. If she tries to make money, it's the same thing. What can she really do? And she's
okay, well, let me put that to Cara Kennedy. Let me put that to Cara Kennedy. So is Meghan damned if she does, damned if she doesn't now, Cara?
I think there's a certain element of that, but I think the best thing that they can both do is just keep their mouth shut. Leaking letters, leaking stories, it feeds the beast. It creates an entire situation. Yeah, I think the issue with the coronation is they were kind of damned if they turned up together arm in arm and damned if they weren't. But at the end of the day, they've created this situation for themselves. So it's time for them to lie in their bed.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Fascinating debate. That was staff writer at The Spectator, Cara Kennedy, the social commentator Rebecca Toomey, and the royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. But who do you agree with here? After you hear her letter, which accused the royal family of unconscious bias. That's what she wrote to Charles. Should the king now cut all ties with Meghan Markle? Pinky writes, yes, and to make a public declaration, either written or spoken, to say that from now on, he and the royal family disassociate with whatever they are saying, planning or publishing. From Laz via Twitter, absolutely, Meghan has disgraced her father's name by throwing her own family into the proverbial lion's den. So why should the royal family ever allow her the opportunity to do the same to them? And from Jackie, the king, after his coronation, should officially exile them. We cannot have them feeding off the royal family. It is not healthy. And your verdict's now in. 85% of you say King Charles just needs to cut ties with Meghan. 15% of you say he should continue this correspondence. Now, coming up, as the Sunday Mail reveals that police are looking into burner phones in their bombshell investigation into the SNP's finances, does their continuity candidate Humza Yousaf need to distance himself from the previous scandal-hit regime? Neil Oliver live on that soon. But first, as Corbyn ally Diane Abbott made a shocking anti-Semitic comment comparing Jewish suffering, similar to that experienced by gingers. Is she getting an easy ride from the liberal media because of her skin colour? We've got Lawrence Fox investigating this. He's up straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's news channel.
Time now for the Fox Report with the actor-turned-activist Laurence Fox and Corbynite Labour MP Diane Abbott's political career tonight hangs in the balance after she was suspended by her own party for making anti-Semitic comments to The Observer. In the incendiary letter, Abbott made the offensive claim that Irish, Jewish and traveller communities are not all of their lives subjected to racism in the same way people of colour are, before diminishing the prejudice suffered by these groups by comparing it, wait for it, to being ginger. She continued in pre-civil rights America, Irish people, Jewish people and travellers were not required to sit at the back of the bus. She seemed to forgot that Jewish people and travellers were massacred in their millions during the Holocaust just 80 years ago, very often transported to death camps in the back of trains. The disgraced MP was quick to issue an apology as she blamed errors that arose in an initial draft of her letter. But the MSM's hypocritical Liberal lovies immediately rushed to Abbott's defence, with ITV's Robert Peston tweeting that Diane Abbott has suffered much racist abuse in her life. It's important to accept her apology in a spirit of kindness and understanding. Now, Laurence Fox, I'd be more than happy to listen to Peston on this if he would show the same sort of forgiveness when a white person makes the same sort of mistake. But you know, that isn't what happens, Laurence.
It's really sad, Dan, because the thing is, by saying that the only people that can't be racist are black people, you're basically being racist to black people. The whole thing is really strange. It's like either everyone can be racist to everybody or no one can be racist to anybody. But I think what's happened here with Diane Abbott is, you know, it doesn't take much reading or understanding to realise that, you know, crimes and mass genocides against Jewish people have taken place throughout history. And, you know, also she was completely wrong about, obviously, the Jewish question, but she's really wrong about white people being taken as slaves themselves, which they have done. And I think this identitarian movement is really wrong because, you know, there's slavery going on. There's 30 million slaves alive today. And what's Diane Abbott going to do about that, you know, other than put two wrong shoes on?
Oh, Laurence, you do make me giggle. You make me giggle. Now, look, the UK's migrant madness has provided another shocking case study. This is the Mail on Sunday. Laurence revealed that, I couldn't believe this actually, a dangerous former ISIS fighter smuggled himself in here by posing as a 17-year-old boy. That's what we've been warning they've been doing for years, despite the fact he's a 42-year-old man. He's an Iraqi national, Lawrence. He's now staying at a 3-star hotel at our expense while he appeals the decision to deport him, brazenly claiming he's suffering from depression that can only be treated by the NHS and that deporting him to Iraq would breach his human rights. Lawrence, come on. Come on. When are we going to start protecting ourselves?
How dare you misage him? How dare you?
Does he identify as a 17-year-old?
What I want to know is who was the border person that was like, yeah, you're 17. It's like Helen Keller? Was that the border person? It's like, yeah, it feels like a 17-year-old. Look, this whole migrant thing is bringing up a massive problem we have in this country, which is demography. We are not breeding. But we've managed to scare all our children into chopping their willies and girls' bits off to be an androgynous, non-fertile population. So no wonder we need a load of immigrants to come in and prop up our economy. But yeah, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, until we leave the EHCR, until we are a Conservative government, I've got a sneaking suspicion, I was told actually, but today, by some members of the security services outside Parliament, that they've been told that there are no extra shifts after May the 4th, right? So there's no post 10 p.m. shifts after May the 4th. So it looks like either Rishi Sunak's going to prorogue Parliament and call a snap general election, or you know they're trying to bring this thing through very, very quickly, and it's not going to happen. We need to go. We need to leave the EHCR, get out of it as soon as possible, and it's not going to happen under the government.
No, that is the answer, though. I think you're right. Now, look, in the latest go woke, go broke files, Lawrence, the beer brand, God, I mucked that up, didn't I? Good one, Dan. Bud Light has been fighting for its commercial life. This is obviously over this Dylan Mulvaney promotion. But the vice president of marketing, so this was the woman responsible, she's called Alyssa Heinesheed, has actually taken a leave of absence. Meanwhile, back here, British companies don't seem to have learned any lessons, Lawrence, as the supermarket chain Waitrose was caught lecturing its well-heeled shoppers on the climate emergency this weekend with signage encouraging customers to reduce their carbon footprint by adding plant-based alternatives to their diet. So, Lawrence, as these big brands continue to push virtue signalling wokery onto their customers, should Waitrose really have learned what happened from Bud Light? And can't customers just pull these signs down and say, we're going to eat whatever the hell we choose to eat?
Yeah, but they can't get their ESG points, can they? So they're incapable of. So in order to get funding, they have to be environmental, social, and have good governance. And these are things. I go into Waitrose. I now don't shop at Waitrose or Sainsbury's because then you're a racist if you don't. I can't remember whether you're racist or not racist if you shop at Sainsbury's. But the dividers where you get your shop in Waitrose has pride flags on it. And it's like, why is the supermarket telling me what I can and can't buy? And why are you asking me to replace plants with meat? It's like ridiculous. It doesn't make economic commercial sense. So this woman who's been fired or been moved on, the point is she's gone woke school, woke university, woke life, and she's not had any real experience of what it's like to be alive. So no wonder that she's just butted up against reality, which is like you're trying to sell beer to a bunch of, rednecks in America, and you're going to tell them they're frat kids to do it. It's absolutely insanity. But the point is, I think this is actually a much deeper conspiracy, which is that BlackRock and Vanguard and these big companies are insisting on ESG points, and they're trying to stifle the market so that they can conquer it. And if we don't just turn around and do what very good people on social media have done, which is boycott Budweiser and these stupid brands like Nike, for promoting transgenderism, it's just ridiculous. Just get rid of it, move on. But actually, we're never going to win. We're not going to win the battle, Dan, because the battle is ESG, and the battle has already been won.
No, indeed, I couldn't agree more. But well done to Miss Heinesheed, because she leaves Bud having wiped $6 billion off the company's parent within one weekend. So that will be her legacy. Maybe she should go and get a job at Nike.
Dan, look at the Budweiser share price. Look at the Anheuser-Busch share price. Look at it. It's back up.
Is it?
Just where it was. Yeah, right where it was. So it's terrifying. Someone somewhere is going...
Disappointing. Very disappointing. Lawrence Fox, great stuff this week. And Lawrence, of course, back here 7 o'clock Friday night on GB News. Thank you, Lawrence. But coming up, as Dominic Raab joins Johnson and Truss on the list of Conservative casualties targeted by the deep state, is Home Secretary Superwoman Sue Ellen. Next, my Superstar panel return to debate that shortly. But after the break, with police looking into burner phones and their inquiry into the SNP's finances, does the party's continuity candidate, Humza Useless, need to cut away from scheming Sturgeon's scandal-ridden regime? Neil Oliver, live on this, straight after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Celia Walden on the way, but Neil Oliver is tonight's Outsider first. And in another astonishing development in the SNP finance probe, the Sunday Mail has revealed that Scottish police are on the hunt for SIM cards linked to burner phones as part of their bombshell investigation. Today, the SNP civil war erupted in Westminster as Leader in the House of Commons Stephen Flynn admitted that he only found out the party's auditors had quit 5 months after the event. But despite all of that, Kelly Given, a rabid SNP member, a columnist, by the way, for the pro-separatist propaganda newspaper The National, appeared on the BBC, where she gave a glowing review of party management.
The SNP are forced as well to be the most transparent because we are held to such a higher standard. You know, the Tories get away with murder. They get away with anything. And it's like they're not held accountable in public ever. And it's like they don't take any accountability. There's hardly any scrutiny on them. I mean, we've had like a forensic tent in the ex-First Minister's garden on full view for everyone. We've got people camping outside her house to video her leaving her house. Like, that is transparency. What else do you possibly want?
Wonder why the tent was there. SNP members have expressed concern that Scheming Sturgeon could be arrested next. However, the inheritor of this chaos, Humza Eustace, who met Rishi Sunak tonight at Westminster, is ignoring the ever-growing calls to suspend Sturgeon while this police investigation is ongoing. And columnist for the Sunday Times, Alex Massey, wrote yesterday, Eustace's tenure in office has been an almost entirely unmitigated disaster, prompting suggestions that he is, in effect, First Minister in name only, at the mercy of events rather than in command of them. Neil Oliver, I mean, that's most certainly the case, isn't it? But he hitched himself to Scheming Sturgeon. He didn't ask many questions, so doesn't he deserve this mess?
Yes, he does, Dan. You say hitched. He thought he hitched his wagon to a star. But you know, it's brutally apparent that he's hitched his wagon to a burnt-out lump of space junk that fell to earth and cratered in Nicola Sturgeon's mother-in-law's cul-de-sac. He is a victim of his own inability. He is in a party of politicians who are incapable of running a country, and the SNP shouldn't really be allowed to run a tombola at a town fete. But in a party of incapables, he is the incapable's incapable. He has failed at everything. He failed at transport, he failed at the judiciary, he failed at health and kept falling upwards. And now SNP's most incapable is First Minister. And when it comes to getting the job done, the SNP have proven time and time again to be incapable. They are not interested in the day-to-day, the quite frankly routine business of running a country. You know, they can't provide ferries where they're needed for the islands. They can't improve life expectancy. They can't deal with the drugs deaths. They can't deal with the fact that under their bailiwick, education has fallen through the floor and has had to be taken off of the international league tables. And it's because they have no interest in, far less the ability to run a country. All they've ever done is promise utopia and the undeliverable. They've been promising independence since the day and hour of their conception.
Yeah.
And it's that jam tomorrow that undoes them. And
Neil, is that why... Sorry, Neil, I was just going to say, is that why their supporters forgive them for so much? I mean, we literally see a woman on the BBC trying to suggest that Sturgeon has been transparent as leader because there's a police tent outside her house, the police having just arrested her husband, when you've got the SNP leader at Westminster saying he had no idea that the auditors had even been sacked. I mean, it seems to me like the opposite of transparency. Why are the supporters still trying to make excuses?
That was a truly bizarre clip that you played. Because you plainly, to anyone with any sense, there's a big difference between being transparent and being investigated by the police. Yeah. Those are two very different states of being. Because you're being investigated for alleged wrongdoing is not the same as being transparent before those events unfold. You are right. You do touch on the nub of the matter there. There's always been a hardcore of SNP support, small but very vocal and very determined, that is addicted only to the fantasy of utopia, that promised independence that's never been realistic and is never going to come. But because that's all they care about, they are completely oblivious to anything else. They don't care about the sleaze. They don't care about when a finance minister has to leave his post because he's been sending peculiar texts to a 16-year-old schoolboy. They don't care about the incompetence. They don't care about the failure. They don't care about the disgracing of Scotland on the world stage. They hear the promise of jam tomorrow and they close their eyes to everything else. Nicola Sturgeon could have eaten a baby on live television and the hardcore would still have voted for her. There is a complete ambivalence to reality on the part of that hardcore. They will never stop believing in the SNP. And that is just a fact of life. But, the tragedy, the real tragedy is that there's a terrible, There's an inevitability or a predictability about all of this. When it comes to getting the job done, the SNP just cannot do it. They can't build ferries, they can't fix the health service, they can't fix education, they can't do any of that because their eye has never been on that ball. They're not interested in it. They're a single issue protest group. And Humza Yousaf has always and only been Nicola Sturgeon's nodding dog. He promised only more Sturgeon at a time when Scotland demonstrably needed a whole lot less of Sturgeon. So there we have it. Scotland is being promised more of the same that has laid it so low. And unless and until the SNP shuffle off the stage into the oblivion that awaits, Scotland will exist in this hopeless limbo.
I know. Just a very quick word, Neil. Do you think it opens the door at all for an Alex Salmond comeback?
I don't think so. I think that whole independence-driven, single-issue aspect of Scotland's recent history has bored everybody to tears, and it has driven the country into the ditch. We are stuck as a nation, as a people, somewhere hopeless at the moment. And I think if there is any sense, if there is any grasp left on reality, then independence, which is to say independent-minded political spokespeople will step forward into this abyss and say, let's just get down to the business of running a country and putting Scotland back where it belongs, which is the proud and sensible country that it always was and it always will be when we get back to reality.
Hear, hear. Powerful stuff. The man we wanted to hear from on this, Neil Oliver. Thank you so much. Of course, important legal note, the allegations surrounding the SNP's finances are denied by all parties involved. Coming up, as Meghan lashes out at the British press for creating an exhausting circus, Celia Walden is in the house. But next, with Raab joining Johnson & Truss on the list of Tory victims targeted by the deep state, is Suella Braverman now under threat? My superstar panel debate that. We're back in just 2 minutes' time.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have. No one will be cancelled. Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, after the jumped-up civil service succeed in their witch hunt against Dominic Raab, is the fall of the former Justice Secretary proof that the woke blob are surreptitiously in control of our government?
A phone is lit up by ministers now very concerned that they could be accused of these things for behaviour that in most walks of life would be regarded as important managerial scrutiny.
Calvin Mackenzie warns of the snowflake socialists inside Whitehall later this hour. But next, as Raab joins Johnson and Truss on the list of Conservative casualties, is the Home Secretary, Superwoman Suella Braverman, next to be targeted by the British deep state. I'll get the views on my superstar panel on that, and tonight I'm joined by Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Belinda de Lucy. Also coming up, Meghan Markle has broken cover for the first time since snubbing the coronation to introduce one of her woke Hollywood chums.
I've experienced his talent firsthand as he has captured many meaningful milestones for me and my family.
But despite the smiles on camera, she launched yet another attack on the British press for daring to report on her clashes with the King. So I'll be joined by Star Daily Telegraph columnist Celia Walden soon for her intriguing analysis of this latest royal run, and including why she thinks Harry and Meghan are now living separate lives. Plus, as Diane Abbott sparks a new anti-Semitism, Ralph Keir Starmer has Labour renewed its reputation once more as the racist party. We discuss Abbott's despicable comments in the media buzz. Elsewhere, for the first time since his brother was found guilty of being a paedophile, Philip Schofield was back on screen with Holly Willoughby today. And amid reports of behind-the-scenes discussions over Phil's future, were they actually happy to see each other?
Hello and welcome to your Mondays this morning. It is nice to be back. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm much better.
Oh, come on, Holly, tell us the truth. I'll bring you more on that awkward reunion later in the show. And finally, in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass, we pay tribute to the best of entertainment. Len Goodman and Barry Humphries both died over the weekend. Can't believe it. It's a cliche, but we definitely won't see their anti-woke like again on mainstream telly, that's for sure. We'll have a first look at tomorrow's newspapers, hot off the press. That's in mere moments, straight after Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. The top story on GB News tonight. The government says it's taking the Royal College of Nursing to court after labelling their planned strike action as unlawful. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, says he's been left with no choice but to proceed with legal action, following attempts by his officials to resolve the situation. It comes as the union prepares to take industrial action from the 30th of April to the 2nd of May. The RCN's leader, Pat Cullen, described the government's anti-trade union legislation as draconian. The Confederation of British Industry says it has dismissed a number of people after a series of sexual misconduct and rape allegations. Dozens of the body's members, including BMW, Vodafone and John Lewis, have all left, with the organisation suspending all its policy and membership activities forthwith. Earlier, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, said there was no point engaging with the CBI anymore and that the government wants to work with a trade body that sticks up for business. Sir Keir Starmer says the comments made by Labour MP Diane Abbott were anti-Semitic. In an article for The Observer, the former Shadow Health Secretary said Jewish, Irish and traveller people experienced prejudice but not racism. She's since withdrawn the remarks and she's apologised. Labour has previously come under fire for anti-Semitic remarks made by former party leader Jeremy Corbyn. Sir Keir says it's absolutely right the party acted swiftly as it did.
What she wrote yesterday I utterly condemn.
And I said we would tear out anti-Semitism by its roots. I meant it, and that's why we acted so swiftly yesterday. I think it's a mark of how far the Labour Party has changed, that we acted so swiftly and that we take it so seriously. But I condemn what she said.
Some slightly more positive news coming out of North Africa tonight. The US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, says the Sudanese army and their rival paramilitary group have now agreed to implement a ceasefire. The 72-hour nationwide truce will begin at midnight. That comes as the Africa Minister, Andrew Mitchell, said the government's exploring every conceivable option to evacuate British nationals from Sudan. Germany has already evacuated more than 300 people today, including some British citizens. The Foreign Office is advising those still in the country to stay where they are and wait for further information. It's estimated there are about 2,000 to 4,000 UK nationals still left in the country. Now, scientists have released the most detailed images yet of Mars's moon, Deimos. The photographs were captured by the United Arab Emirates Space Agency during their recent flyby of the moon. Their probe flew as close as 62 miles to Deimos, one of the pictures capturing the red planet drifting into view during the probe's closest approach. And finally, the Queen Consort has paid tribute to the former Strictly Come Dancing judge Len Goodman, who's died at the age of 78. Buckingham Palace says Camilla, who's danced with Len Goodman, was saddened to learn of his death. Dame Arlene Phillips said her heart was truly broken. Darcy Bustle called him a true gent. Fellow judge Craig Revel-Horwood said Len would live on with him forever, and Bruno Tonioli called him the one and only ballroom legend. He was a judge on the show from 2004 to 2016. That's all from me. I'm back in an hour.
Tomorrow's News Tonight now in our media buzz. So let's kick off with the very first look at the front pages. These are hot off the press. Get them out is the headline in the Metro as a unit of British troops land in war-torn Sudan to work out if they can evacuate 4,000 Brits currently stranded in the country. The Guardian leads on comments from the boss of the Confederation of British Industry, who says the future of his organisation is in doubt after a toxic culture scandal. Meanwhile, the newspaper carries big news from the US media tonight, where star Fox News host Tucker Carlson has dramatically left the broadcaster. Lots of rumours swirling that he's actually been sacked, potentially in part because of the lawsuit between Dominion and Fox News. My goodness, Tucker Carlson, the biggest star in US news broadcasting. Where he goes next is going to be fascinating, because believe me, there's going to be a second chapter of Tucker Carlson. My superstar panel back with me now, though. Top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, the journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and the political commentator Belinda de Lucy. Now, Superwoman Suella Braverman is doubling down on her hard-hitting migration bill in Parliament this week, but her tenacity is coming at a cost. There'll be no stopping the Home Secretary if she manages to stop the boats, which is exactly what the far-left civil service blob are all too aware of. In a looming fresh round of attacks, Suella has been warned by senior Tory MPs that she's next in line to be taken out by Whitehall's Liberal plotters, having already seen the likes of Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, her predecessor Priti Patel, and most recently Dominic Raab, successfully toppled by the British deep state. Now, allies fear a scurrilous new whispering campaign is set to be unleashed on the Home Sec, just weeks after vicious briefing against her saw unnamed Tory sources claim she was dragging the party's reputation through the mud with voters. She need to have her wits about her, but Suella remained bullish on the job in hand, with a defiant column in the Daily Telegraph declaring, "For our country to be truly sovereign, we must be able to decide who enters our territory and on what terms. This is a matter of such unimpeachable logic and common sense that it's astonishing anyone dissents." Hear, hear. But Belinda de Lucy is Braverman, the next who is going to become the target of the deep state, because, let's be honest, this woman wants to stop the boats.
I think she's definitely on the target list. I think she's been there for some time. But the sort of lefty, liberal, pro-EU, pro-mass immigration folk that you talk about are deeply inside the Conservative Party. And that is the problem. She is facing the machinery of a very woke, lefty, liberal Tory party. She's fighting against the Conservative Party all the time because, I mean, the horrific things that were said about her...
Well, the party's divided, isn't it? Let's be honest. There are two very different wings at the moment at war.
And unfortunately, it's such a broad church now. It's become a circus. It's almost
but the point is, she's the Home Secretary. The Blob should be working to do what she needs to do to save the country, Carol Malone. They shouldn't be working to get her sacked, but that's what they did with Priti Patel.
They've been gunning for her from the start, and exactly as they did with Priti Patel. Remember, she was accused of being a bully too.
What is it they don't like about powerful conservative ethnic minority women, Carol?
Well, it is odd, isn't it? And it is odd that Priti Patel was accused of bullying too. This just seems to be the thing. But it's incredible now we have a situation where the UK's elected government is incapable of controlling the state. Now, Rishi Sunak has to look at what is happening here and deal with this. You know,
but that's why he should never have given on.
No, he shouldn't. And this is exactly what we knew was going to happen. You know, this is frustrating democracy at every turn. You know, and you mentioned before, there's now rumours of a new whispering campaign against Suella. They're going to bring up more ministerial code.
I don't even think they're whispering, are they? They're shouting.
But they're going to drag out more ministerial code breaches and all the rest of it. And all because she wants to do what the British public wants her to do. Every poll you see, they want the boats stopped. And remember a few months ago when she was trying to get some human rights legislation through, the members of the Blob were saying, we can't do this. Our consciences won't allow us to do this. This is inhumane. It is not up to them
And by the way, what's inhumane is not stopping the boats. I mean, Benjamin Butterworth, she's completely right, isn't she? This is a matter of such unimpeachable logic and common sense that it's astonishing anyone dissents. Presumably, as a man without much logical common sense, you are going to dissent.
That's bullying, Dan.
Yeah. I mean, look, every time you say woke blob, I fear you're talking about me. You know, the idea that she is so...
I'll just call you woke Mr. Blobby from now on.
The idea that she is so weak and incapable that random civil servants can overrule her is absurd. The truth is that this is a woman who can't even send an email to the right person, let alone run the most difficult department in government.
Have you ever, by the way, because I have you ever sent an email and you're writing a horrible email, right, about someone, and you have their name in your head, and so you type... Come on, you've done that before.
Look, I've never sent those emails to you directly, so we've survived that. But the truth is that if she was serious about stopping the boats, then you wouldn't have more people coming over through the channel than you have since 2003-04. But when there was a Labour government, the time it took, when the figures were last this high, the time it took to deal with those boats and those refugees was a fraction of now.
But do you not understand
Suella Braverman is
But do you not
useless.
understand why that is happening? It is happening in large part... I mean, I agree with Belinda de Lucy, partly because of the Conservative Party having this left-wing wing, but also partly because of the civil service, the woke blobs, the deep state's constant attempt to undermine government policy.
But do you know how long it takes them to process one
Too long.
refugee? It takes them 18 months. And that's because they want it to take 18 months. In France, it takes 6 months. Here, it takes 18. Why is that?
But
they're useless.
But what's ridiculous is that you're not blaming, instead you're endorsing the person who's in charge of that system.
No, because I know Suella wants to stop the boats.
This was not always
she wants
the
to
way.
stop the boats.
When there was a Labour government, the time it took to deal with these refugees or these asylum claimers was a fraction. No, there wasn't.
Yes,
the number
there
was higher in 2003-04.
No, that's
was.
tosh. That's tosh. In 2008, it was 4,800 came across in the boats, and now it's
And 4 years before that,
I just want to say, as an example of what Suella is facing, the former Border Force chief came out saying borders, bloody borders, they're a pain in the arse. He was anti-borders. This was our Border Force chief. We've got
Very
the
good
chief.
point.
Yeah, there are so many people in the civil service
Indeed.
that are against Suella.
Absolutely. Now, look, gender extremism has taken yet another dark turn with a chilling warning from a trans activist to women who stop amusing female toilets in a now deleted US TikTok post. This is Tara J. They began transition in 2017, but Tara J is threatening violence against females who oppose him using their spaces.
If you back a wild animal into a corner, they're going to become a dangerous animal. So if you want to die on that hill of yours of righteousness and moral majority, then you go right ahead. I dare you to try and stop me from going into a women's bathroom. It will be the last mistake you ever make. This is a call to action. You need to arm up. Plain and simple. Go out, buy a gun. Learn how to use it efficiently, through and through, because there are lots of people like me who are not afraid to die.
Wow. But trans violence is not the only side of gender ideology currently sweeping the globe. The mocking of women continued in Canada, where emasculated politicians paraded around their parliament wearing pink high heels in an apparent show of solidarity to female victims of violence. The stunt aimed to, quote, educate men and boys about gender-based violence while raising cash for a shelter. But I think it's actually ridiculing women. Belinda DeLucy, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, do stand by, because coming up, as Diane Abbott sparks a fresh anti-Semitism row in the Labour Party after comparing the racism faced by the Jewish community to being ginger, can Slippery Starmer's socialist cabal ever truly be trusted in government? But next, as Meghan Markle breaks cover to introduce a woke pal's TED Talk, is she a hypocrite to blame the press? Blame the press for creating an exhausting circus so soon after she herself released her tell-all Netflix documentary to the world. Star columnist of the Daily Telegraph, Celia Walden, joins me live next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, Meghan Markle broke cover for the first time since snubbing King Charles's coronation invite today as she introduced her woke celebrity photographer pal, Misan Harriman, for a TED Talk. Watch.
Our next speaker has an unmatched eye for a good photograph. I've experienced his talent firsthand as he has captured many meaningful milestones for me and my family. I am so thrilled to welcome to the TED stage my dear friend, Misan Harriman.
And in a dramatic exclusive for the Daily Telegraph, the newspaper has revealed that the Duchess snubbed her coronation invite because she felt King Charles's response to her letter accusing the royal family of unconscious bias was, quote, unsatisfactory. The typically pious correspondence was penned in the wake of her infamous 2021 interview. I call it a tissue of lies, rather than an interview with Oprah Winfrey, during which she made spurious claims about a royal family member questioning unborn Archie's skin colour. The Duchess also wrote to the King because she had concerns about a bullying probe launched against her, and she also complained about royal neglect, leaving her feeling suicidal, she says. However, a spokesperson on behalf of Meghan hit back at speculation she is missing the coronation because of her dissatisfaction with Charles, insisting that the Duchess of Sussex is going about her life in the present, not thinking about correspondence from 2 years ago related to conversations from 4 years ago. Any suggestion otherwise is completely false and frankly ridiculous. We encourage tabloid media and various royal correspondents to stop the exhausting circus that they alone are creating. Well, I'm delighted to be joined now by the star columnist from said newspaper, the Daily Telegraph, Celia Wootton. I mean, Celia, honestly, if I didn't know Meghan Markle and what this woman is like, I would genuinely think that that statement was from one of those satirical websites. I would think it was a spoof. We only know about the conversation because she went and told Oprah Winfrey and then hasn't stopped talking about it for the past 3 years.
But Dan, you and I, we've got to stop our exhausting circus. We are the ones creating this. She's done nothing. She's quietly getting on with her life very happily. And she doesn't need, you know, any prompting from us. But it's, as you say, I mean, it's just beyond belief. And I think, sadly, we're going to see a lot more of this in the build-up to the 6th of May.
Oh, yeah.
And I would, in fact, expect a sort of particular bombshell to be leaked at about 6 a.m. on that Saturday morning, because she's got to be kept. Don't you think something's going to possibly the name of the person who questioned her son's skin colour? So I think that this is unfortunately the beginning of a drip.
Yeah, because
let's
she's
keep the vote where it belongs.
Because at the end of the day, right, Celia, she doesn't want the coronation to be a success. She wants King Charles to fall flat on his face.
Yes. Well, or more than that, she needs, you know, she wants the attention kept firmly on her, because that's where the attention should always be. And I think also there's already whispers of the idea that sort of Harry and her seem to be breaking apart from each other in terms of their agendas slightly, you know, that they are both sort of leading slightly sort of separate lives in terms of of their public duties at the moment. And I suppose that's tricky for her too, because she needs the whole coupledom thing to be sort of front and centre.
So what do you think is going on there, Celia? Because we haven't seen them together for months and months and months. And, of course, previously she described them, I think, as being like salt and pepper.
Yeah, yes. Well, I don't know. I mean, it does seem, of all the different scenarios that probably you and I have discussed on this very show, I didn't actually envisage, and she's pretty predictable, really, but I didn't envisage her ever saying no. because I felt that she had to have this moment to remain relevant. And the reason for her doing so is still a bit of a mystery. I mean, there is stories about that, there are these stories about it being about the letter, and I'm sure that is a factor. But I suspect she was also fearful of perhaps being booed, which may have happened, but also wanted to maybe dig her heels in and make her point. And she's going to continue to make her point day after day in various different little ways.
Yeah, do you think maybe she was angry that Harry came out in this interview in January and said, actually, it's not racist, it's not racism within the royal family, it's unconscious bias? Because remember, the thing I will never forgive her for is that she allowed this corrosive narrative to travel around the world, to do huge damage to the royal family, without correcting the record, even though it was in Prince Philip's dying days and the late Queen's dying days, and they died thinking that the royal family was shrouded in racism allegations. We now know they were never talking about racism. They were only talking about unconscious bias. Well, hello, all you needed to do was come out and say, no, the royal family is not racist. They never did that, and I can't forgive that.
No, and in fact, they carried on this sort of weird alternate universe thing that they do, which is almost Trumpian, actually, isn't it? Where, when Trump does that thing where he'll just completely deny he's ever said anything, and it does actually slightly fluster you. So you start to question whether you're perhaps completely losing your mind, And as tactics go, it's probably not a bad one, except that in this case, we know that they did very, very firmly accuse the British royal family of racism. And I'm with you. I really object to being in America and having this perception of Britain as a racist country, because I've lived here almost all my life, and I really don't think we are.
No, indeed. And you're right. You just have to go back and look at the theatrical Oprah Winfrey interview where Oprah was getting very excited and it was clear that Meghan was talking about racism. Then there were months of stories about Harry and Meghan were lobbying for the palace to hire a diversity czar. I mean, come on, they knew what they were doing. All it would have taken was one statement. That statement never came. But look, I want to talk about the nicer members of the family, if we can, Camilla. Camilla being the person I want to talk about, because can you believe, I mean, this shows how she has very different relations, right, with her family. Apparently, her ex-husband is going to be at the coronation. You know Camilla a little bit, right? Does this surprise you?
I'm lucky enough to have met her a few times, and from the very, very short meetings that I had with her, she seemed kind of delightfully mischievous, and I could see that she's got this sort of she can see the amusement value of all sorts of things, and I thought she was a great woman, but I think in this case, I mean, you can tell a lot by how close people are to their families. And obviously there are certain rifts that are nobody's fault and so on, but it's never a good sign if people don't get on with any of their family at all. And so you've got this absolute sort of converse situation, haven't you, with Camilla, where it's a wonderfully close-knit modern family, and she's incredibly close to her husband. They were together for her former husband. They were together for 21 years. They share 2 kids together. Apparently they have lunch constantly, and he calls her up to tell her off if she's done something wrong. And I love the idea that he's going to be there reveling in this moment of happiness for her and for Charles.
Indeed, they've come a long way, haven't they? They've come a long way over the decades. Fascinating stuff. Star Daily Telegraph columnist Celia Walden, thank you so much, Celia. But coming up in Uncancelled, does Dominic Raab's resignation prove that the deep state blob have now seized control of Westminster? And should we celebrate rather than condemn Raab's tough, no-nonsense approach to action? Well, someone tough, no-nonsense. Calvin McKenzie is going to be live in the studio on that very soon. But next in the Media Buzz, never mind the nasty party, is Labour the racist party? After Diane Abbott's disgusting attack on Jewish people, I'm going to ask my superstar panel if Keir Starmer really has rooted out anti-Semitism from the Labour movement in just a moment. Stay tuned too. We're going to have the first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages too.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest. Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz, and more front pages have been delivered. OK, let's start with the Daily Express, which leads with an exclusive from Rishi Sunak, who pledges his unwavering commitment to preserve the rights and dignity of all women across Britain. Brilliant stuff. He told the paper, I know what a woman is, and I will protect women's rights and women's spaces. This is an area that I believe Keir Starmer is very vulnerable in, because remember, Keir Starmer still thinks women can have penises. The Daily Star reports that space tourists of the future may be forced to sign no-sex waivers to prevent, I quote, unwelcome sperm mutations. Didn't see that coming. Goodness me. And the Daily Mail leads on business leaders taking Rishi Sunak to task over the hated tourist tax, accusing him of scoring a, quote, spectacular own goal for introducing the levy to remove VAT refunds on foreign visitors. The paper also pays tribute to the late Len Goodman with a beaming front page picture, and they say, farewell to Len, the strictly perfect 10. Yeah, what a great man he was. More on the media buzz now with tonight's superstar panel. Top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, the journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and the former MEP Belinda de Lucy. Now, Diane Abbott has apologised for plunging Labour into a new anti-Semitism row over the weekend, with uneducated comments claiming Jews do not experience racism. The former Shadow Home Secretary said Jews only suffered, quote, prejudice akin to redheads and the Irish, insisting racism was simply a matter of black and white. Abbott retreated after a furious backlash, saying in a statement, I wish to wholly and unreservedly withdraw my remarks and disassociate myself from them. The errors arose in an initial draft being sent to The Guardian. I wish to apologise for any anguish caused. Despite that, Keir Starmer almost immediately removed the whip from Jeremy Corbyn's old ally. Watch.
What she wrote yesterday, I utterly condemn. And I said we would tear out anti-Semitism by its roots. I meant it, and that's why we acted so swiftly yesterday. In my view, what she said was to be condemned. It was anti-Semitic. It's absolutely right that we acted as swiftly as we did.
But come on, does any of this come as a surprise? With the nasty Labour Party's loathsome record? It was only 2 weeks ago that Starmer doubled down on vile campaign posters that claim Rishi Sunak didn't want to jail child sex offenders. Meanwhile, earlier this month, MP Rupa Hark got the whip back, even though she called the former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng superficially black. And last year, the Ford report, commissioned by Starmer himself, found anti-Semitism and racism was rife in the party under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. So, Benjamin Butterworth, how on earth can you defend Labour when I've just given you 3 examples that it's not just the nasty party, it's now the racist party? I mean, I don't think Keir Starmer could have been much clearer. It takes pretty extraordinary guts to remove the previous leader from being able to be a Labour MP, to being able to be a candidate again. He served under him. He wanted him to be Prime Minister, and he knew he was anti-Semitic, Benjamin. So throw that out the window, OK? Next. No, he removed him from office, and the truth is that, of course...
He wanted him to be Prime Minister.
What most people...
If Starmer had his way, Corbyn, an anti-Semite, would currently be Prime Minister.
No, I think you're clutching at straws because he removed him from being able to...
But look,
you know, the idea that Keir Starmer hasn't been tough on anti-Semitism is an insult to Jewish people. Many of the Jewish groups have praised him for moving forward. And, of course, most people don't realise this, but if Starmer makes it into Downing Street, that will be the first Jewish family ever in Downing Street because his wife and children are both practising Jews.
Rupa Hark has got the whip back after describing Kwasi Kwarteng as superficially black. Starmer today didn't say that Abbott would be banned from the party permanently. And then you've got folk like Robert Peston of ITV News, who loves bringing down any right-wing politician, saying, oh, we should just forgive Diane Abbott and move on. Is there a double standard at play here because Diane Abbott is black?
Well, first of all, I think Robert Peston was wrong to try and speak on behalf of all Jewish people as though they shouldn't be offended by the comments. But, you know, there was a Conservative councillor only a couple of weeks ago who said that you should be able to have black slaves. No, it's not whataboutery. It's another example of the fact that racism exists in different parties.
And you're trying to raise a random Tory councillor. No. I've never heard of this bloke. I don't know who you're talking about. But Carol Malone, we're talking about the shadow...
Well, you've heard of Suella Braverman, and she does some pretty racist things.
You know, her idiot allies say we should accept her apology because she herself has been a victim of racist abuse. That, because of that very reason, is why this cannot be swept under the carpet, because she knows what racist abuse does to people.
Yeah, but she doesn't believe if you're white you can suffer racism.
Well, she doesn't. You know, the Holocaust was the most deranged racist crime against humanity, and yet... Diane Abbott tried to say that all that happens to the Jews was prejudice. You know, what does she think happened in the Holocaust? And you're right, she seems to think racism can only happen to black people. She doesn't appear. So there's this narrative developing, thanks to people like her, that all the whites are privileged and all the black people are oppressed. And on that basis, the Jews are white, and so they are not suffering racism. So it is outrageous. She is a bigot. She is what a bigot looks like. She has pulled the race card many times during her career, and yes, she's been attacked. But you know, do you remember what Whoopi Goldberg said?
Oh, yeah.
A couple of years ago? She said she was asked about the Holocaust, and she said this wasn't about race. It was just two groups of white.
And she was forgiven. She was forgiven. And actually, I think
it's what a lot of black people like
really,
her and think.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating point. I think, because what we're seeing, Belinda de Lucy, in my opinion, is the Americanization of our race grievance industry. And those folk believe it is impossible for white people to suffer racism. Oh. Diane Abbott is looking at the world through the prism of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, and she's wrong.
And let's just remember the whole BLM critical race theory movement. Keir Starmer knelt
to the BLM movement.
What was wrong with that?
Because the BLM movement is a political movement that divides people based on the colour of their skin, and it's also
pathetic.
It is revenge racism.
It was pathetic. Don't you agree with Dominic Raab, who says you kneel for two people, your wife when you're proposing and the Queen? And I actually think that taking the knee, Starmer and Rain are pathetically taking the knee, that's going to come back and haunt
He's the king of identity politics, and I'm glad she wrote this article because Diane has exposed this running thread within the left that belittles the Holocaust, belittles what happened to the Jews. You see Gary Lineker, David Lammy, they all have the same
Benjamin,
thing.
do you want to come back? Well, what Diane Abbott did was completely wrong and no one disputes that. But how quickly you went from criticising her racist comment to criticising Black Lives Matter and black people standing up for their own existence.
Let's go back to
the hypocrisy is palpable.
No, I'm criticising the Black Lives Matter organisation, which if you investigated them like we all did, the mainstream media didn't, so you probably didn't. They want to overthrow capitalism. They want to dismantle the family. And by the way, they're spending all of your money. You mugs that fundraise, they're spending it all on mansions in Los Angeles. So well done.
The black British people that went on BLM marches and were spurred on by that movement were doing so because of the racism in this country. And while Diane Abbott was wrong in her comments, she has been an extraordinary parliamentarian that has raised the issue of anti-black racism.
So you're another one defending her. Final word, Carol.
She has no idea what racism is. She had the brass neck to compare.
I think she knows better than you.
Listen, she has the brass neck to compare Mickey taking over people who have ginger hair to actual racism. It's stupid.
That was a terrible comparison. Now, look, on a lighter note, there was a legion of makeshift body language experts earlier today as Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby returned to present This Morning together after weeks apart. The pair finally reunited on screen for the first time after Philip's brother Timothy Schofield was found guilty of being a paedophile. And yesterday, the Mail on Sunday newspaper revealed that behind the scenes at ITV, a battle is raging over the show's future amid a growing consensus that it's time for Scove to take a step back, with Alison Hammond in line to replace him. So, were the pair able to conceal the reported tensions off-screen? You be the judge.
Hello and welcome to your Mondays this morning. It is nice to be back. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm much better. I mean, I had a sort of wobbly week and a half, and if anybody's had shingles, it's really not the nicest thing. But yes, I'm much better.
All mended.
But a lot of their work's done on computers now as well. So it's like they're turning into sort of us, being in an office and looking at a screen.
Right.
Oh, see, I like a bit of DIY. I'm rubbish at it. I really do. I don't do you in my ear.
There are many ways you could read that interaction, but perhaps most spot on was the very wise viewer who concluded, Holly is leading so far away from Phil just there, she's practically on the loose women panel.
So good.
Linda DeLucy, Benjamin Butterworth, Cameron, don't you dare lean away from me, Benjamin. Come on, come on. Stand by, because coming up in Greatest Britain Union Jackass, following the sad deaths of Len Goodman and Barry Humphries, we pay tribute to two of Britain's best entertainers who said it like it is without any fear of the cancel culture mob. But next at Uncancelled, as the civil service get their way by deposing Dominic Raab, have the woke blob assume control of the Tory government. Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie, who himself, let's say he suffers no fools, says this could have grave consequences for workplaces across the country. Find out why in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And the resignation of Deputy PM Dominic Raab rocked Westminster on Friday after a report into allegations of bullying saw him ousted from the cabinet. After successive PMs Boris Johnson and Liz Truss were both booted out by the Westminster blob, Raab has now become their latest victim, with supposed political ally Prime Minister Rishi Sunak showing his true cowardly colours by hanging his deputy out to dry. Speaking to GB News immediately after his resignation on Friday, Raab gave the following warning.
A phone is lit up by ministers now very concerned that they could be accused of these things for behaviour that in most walks of life would be regarded as important managerial scrutiny.
Considering these complaints included accusations as flimsy as pointing his finger at junior employees and interrupting colleagues' sentences, perhaps to ensure the important managerial scrutiny we'd expect from our country's political leaders, it's no wonder other government ministers are now fearing they could be next. Because if there's one lesson learned from Raab's resignation, both for the Cabinet and the country, it's that the woke blob of civil servants are now able to wield a frightening amount of power and bring down any government minister they happen to disagree with. Well, I'm delighted to welcome back to the studio Fleet Street Kingpin, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin McKenzie. So, Kelvin, look, there's so many aspects to this story. Can we start with the character side of it? Wasn't it important here for Rishi Sunak not just to stand by his closest ally, you know, the bloke who was by his side when he was being thrashed last summer by Liz Truss, but also to say to the civil servant, I'm not a pushover.
Yes, now that, to my mind, it was quite wrong that he allowed, he basically said to Raab, I'm sorry, I can't do anything for you.
Yeah.
You're going to have to resign. By the way, I may bring you back at some juncture. I doubt that. But, because otherwise, why would he have let him go? It was a massive mistake, and I think it's a mistake among the core supporters of the Tory party. They don't want to see Dominic Raab pushed out by a civil servant. So a civil servant feels upset. So what? We all get upset. There is no way that Rishi should not have said, I am going to stand by you. I don't believe that Boris would have thrown him to the wolves, and I don't believe Truss would have thrown
Boris
him.
stood by Priti Patel, and
He
that
did.
sent a powerful message to the blob. Because isn't the issue, Kelvin, that we know what the blob is about, the British deep state, as I've been calling them tonight. They hate Brexit. They want it to fail. They want to undermine it at every point.
They hate the right.
They hate the right, absolutely. But also, what was Raab about to do? He was about to go to battle with the ECHR to help Suella stop the votes. Well, that's significant. Look, that's one of the reasons they hated him.
Yeah, I'm sure he's not a comfortable character. I'm sure there are aspects to him that don't make him very attractive at a dinner party. He's not there for that. He is there to push through an agenda, a conservative agenda, and that's what civil servants don't like. After all, I didn't hear anything about Gordon Brown when he was Prime Minister.
Well, he was chucking mobile phones around.
I had a Labour cabinet minister, a woman, complain to me about his bullying. And that was then. So things are moving on at a phenomenal pace now. Gordon Brown would have, under the same basis that Raab was pushed out, would have been fired as Prime Minister. It is ridiculous. He was a lot nastier than Raab ever was. Raab didn't swear. He didn't shout. But he still lost his job. Rishi, I don't know whether you're any good or not. I have my doubts, actually, funnily enough.
And you were supporting him for a long time.
I was a supporter. I really could not understand this. He wasn't prepared to expend political capital saving him. He probably said to himself, I've got more important things to worry about. Actually, I tell you, Deputy Prime Minister. And how did he replace him? He replaced him with some Dummkopf of a PR guy. Honestly, I'm really beginning to have a question mark about Rishi. I want him to do something which says to Conservatives, we support you.
Well, you know what's going to happen to you soon? You're going to be joining the BBB movement.
Which one?
Bring back Boris. That's where you're going to be at soon, mark my words, because Boris is what we need right now. Look, Kevin, can we talk a bit about the snowflake culture there? Because, look, you were probably the most notorious Fleet Street editor.
Thank you.
You were notorious for your robust management style. Yet now, in government, when actually surely we should have the toughest treatment of civil servants because they have a tough job. They've got to save the country from lots of threats. Actually being so snowflakey, acting like such woke wastrels that they're complaining even if they're stared at the wrong way.
Well, that is true, but one thing has changed in my time is that being an employee is actually a very powerful position, and being an employer is quite a weak position. You have to sell your company to that person, whereas it used to be that person used to have to sell to you. So that's where the real problem has arisen. We haven't got enough people. We're not producing enough children. I'm afraid, actually, now this is even worse, that one day we may be very grateful those people coming on boats and landing at Dover because there is work to be done. So that is the reason why the power shift.
We need our birthright to go. But look, I want to actually talk about that because you're very angry, aren't you, that there's going to be some dilution of the illegal migration bill, which looks like means we, as taxpayers, will now be funding the appeals of asylum seekers.
Yeah, shocking.
In other words, illegal migrants are going to get money from us.
They will be able to use legal aid, our money, right? Just put the words our money instead of legal aid, to actually stop themselves being deported. And the reason for this was that Braverman threw this bone to a load of Liberals on the left wing of the Tory party. I want them all named. I guarantee to you that when local constituents, local voters find out who they are, they will vote them out at the next election, and they should vote them out. This is a very, very serious betrayal. Our country is very worried about 150,000, 20,000, 50,000, however many coming to our shores. And yet now we're saying, oh, welcome here. Oh, by the way, here's 50 quid, here's £5,000. Hire as many lawyers as you like. Can you imagine the lawyers? Honestly, the cost will be phenomenal. Even worse than that, there'll be delay. It'll make its way up to the Supreme Court. These people will be here for years before they may even be thrown out. It's a shocking mistake. I can't understand it. Why doesn't Rishi do something tough? Just simply say, we're not going to do that. Vote down the bill. Vote down my bill. Vote down my bill, and then we can go to the country and say, we tried to stop this. Labour and a load of left-wing Tories decided to stop it. It's a shocking, shocking decision.
Couldn't agree more. Very well put, Calvin McKenzie. Thank you so much. I'll see you later in the week. But it's time now to reveal tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass. Carol Malone, who's your nominee for tonight's GB?
Yeah, mine's Barry Humphries. He's an honorary Brit. He lived in London for decades and he died on Saturday, aged 89, after complications with hip surgery. You know, people fling the words around comic genius all too easily. Barry Humphries really was a comic genius, and every time all of us say Dame Edna, we smile, and we always will.
So true. Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee.
Well, mine is another great entertainer. It's Len Goodman, who we all received the sad news on the news this morning that he died only 78, which isn't a great age, but he was a great entertainer. And I think, like tomorrow's Daily Mail, it's a 10 for Len.
Couldn't agree more. Belinda DeLucy, your nominee.
My greatest Brit is Sir Rod Stewart for coming out very recently saying he's going to pay for more MRI scans for his local community. Not a great look for the NHS, but a great look for a precious national treasure who's putting his money where his mouth is and paying for his local community to have a chance of MRI scans. Good on you, Rod.
Okay, well, I'm going to do a joint Greatest Britain tonight, and it's going to be Carol and Benjamin's nominee, Barry Humphries and Len Goodman. Look, both were giants of their industries and both rose to the top. But what I especially want to point out, because I think it is important, is that they wouldn't today. And the reason they wouldn't today is because both of these brilliant men never signed up to the woke agenda. In fact, they actively fought against it. In his final years, Barry Humphries was actually cancelled by the trans extremists. So I actually just want to say thank you to Barry Humphries and Len Goodman for being celebrities who talked like ordinary folks, who thought like ordinary folk, and I hope there are more people in the entertainment industry like them. But unfortunately, I don't see it these days.
Oh, that was lovely.
Yeah. Carol Malone, your nominee.
Mine is Diane
Oh, this is
Abbott.
Union Jackass. Sorry, Union Jackass.
yes. Mine is Diane Abbott, who managed to infer that the Holocaust, the most hellish example of race mass murder, wasn't racism at all. It was just a bit of prejudice. You know, this is what a bigot looks like. You know, Diane Abbott doesn't realise, she doesn't think that racism can apply to white people. That kind of ignorance and that kind of malice has no place in government.
Good point. Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee.
Well, my Union Jackass has never been easier. It's the bully boy-in-chief, Dominic Raab.
And we know why, don't we? We know why, don't we? Carol's got to turn her phone off.
That's my taxi saying he's there. Thank you for that. He's going to get it.
Oh, just flick it on silent,
Yes.
Carol.
I had it on silent. It's moved in my bag.
Oh, OK. Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee.
Mine was Dominic Raab. It's never been so easy to...
Oh, sorry, I meant Belinda DeLucy. I meant Belinda
Well,
DeLucy.
mine is Rishi Sunak for not backing Dominic Raab. He had a chance to stand up against the civil service activists and he didn't have the spine to do it and sent old Raab off under the bus. So it's Rishi.
It's a tough choice tonight, but I am going to go with Carol Malone and Diane Abbott because I think actually what Diane Abbott has done is show that despite Keir Starmer's spin, despite his propaganda, Labour is not a cleaned-up party. He is still overseeing a mucky party, a nasty party, and let me be honest with you, a racist party. And despite what Benjamin Butterworth may have said earlier, he wanted Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister, and we must never forget that. Benjamin, thank you so much to you. Thank you too to Carol Malone and Belinda DeLucy, my superstar panel. Thank you most for you to watching tonight. I'm back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. Headliners is up next, though. Good night.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of